I'm Raina Morgan with iHealthTube. We're visiting with Dr. Ellie Rappaport, a distinguished scientist in organic chemistry, and he's telling us about ATP. And one of the things we want to know about ATP is, when was it discovered, Doctor?
Well, ATP was discovered in 1929 in Boston by Fisk and Subbarao. And they made two big discoveries. They discovered ATP, and they discovered the involvement of ATP and creatine phosphate in muscle function. Ironically, in the early 1950s and the late 1940s, people used intramuscular injections of ATP, very low levels of ATP, in the treatment of peripheral vascular disease, mostly indications such as stasis dermatitis, and which are skin ulcers that are formed due to phlebitic and varicose vein. And that produced very impressive results. The other utilization of ATP at that time was also in the form of intramuscular injections in the treatment of inflammatory diseases, such as bursitis, tendinitis, and osteoarthritis. Today we know that the activity in inflammatory indication is probably due to adenosine, which is the major anti-inflammatory agent in the body. And it does this by interacting with white blood cells, mostly neutrophils, and kind of slowing them down.
So it really did have an effect on inflammatory
Yes,
diseases.
both inflammatory and blood flow diseases, that could be benefited from improvement in the circulation, such as peripheral vascular disease.
Well, could you talk to us about how ATP affects cardiovascular health?
Yes. Cardiovascular health is a very complex issue. When we deal with the blood vessels, ATP stimulates blood flow. The way it stimulates blood flow is it interacts with receptors on vascular endothelial cells.
Okay.
Now, this interaction produces vasodilation in a way that I will explain later in more detail. Now, the vasodilation is not enough to produce a decrease in blood pressure, what's called hypotension, but it is enough to produce a reduction in what's called pulmonary and systemic vascular resistance. And that increase in the diameter of the blood vessel of 8 to 10% is enough to increase the blood flow by 17%, for instance.
70%?
17%. Yes.
So,
and this is without the heart doing any more work, no increase in heart rate, and no effect on blood pressure. The effect is just on systemic and pulmonary vascular resistance. Now, the effect on the blood flow in the lung, which is the result of the reduction in pulmonary vascular resistance, enables the blood, of course, to absorb more oxygen, the red blood cells. Now, as far as the heart is concerned, this is a very fascinating story, and it has to do with the vicious metabolic cycle that occurs in the failing heart. The heart is like a sponge. It utilizes mostly fatty acids for its energy.
It does?
Yes, but there is a great advantage for utilization of sugars for its energy.
Really?
Because sugars can produce ATP in an anaerobic environment, whereas fatty acids are very expensive as far as oxygen is concerned.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Rappaport. We will talk some more about that, cardiovascular health. Thank you for visiting with us, and we'll speak again.